Hello, I am Jessica Green, and I am your student's Algebra 1 teacher this year. I want to give you a little bit of information about our class and the things that your students will need to be successful. First, my contact information is right here on the screen. The easiest way to get a hold of me is by sending me an email using the email that is on the screen. This is simply because most of the time throughout the day I am teaching, so it's pretty hard for me to answer the phone. However, should you need to reach me via phone, the extension is also there on the screen. It is 7688. If I can't answer, please leave a voicemail and I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as I can. All right, so what supplies does your student need this year? First, they have to have pencils or erasable pens. I prefer that students don't have permanent pens simply because this is a math class and everyone's going to be making mistakes, so we want to be able to erase and start again. So, erasable pens or pencils, please. Second, students need to have either a notebook or a binder with some paper in it should they choose to take notes. The majority of our notes are done up at whiteboards in small groups, so there is no paper that I'm giving out for students to fill out. So should your child choose to take their own notes at the same time, they will need a place to do that. Lastly, they definitely need to have a calculator. If your student already has a calculator that they are familiar with and prefer to use, that's perfectly fine. But if they don't have one yet, the one that I prefer is the TI-30XS. It's the picture that you see on the screen right now. The reason I love this one is simply for the capabilities that it has. It has a really good fraction function. It makes things actually look like fractions on the screen, and also it has all of the capabilities that your students will need as they go through their high school career and even into college should they choose to go. It's about $15, $20 or so. So if your student doesn't have a calculator yet, that's the one that I recommend. However, any calculator will do. Classroom expectations. Students can expect to be working collaboratively with their peers for every single lesson that we do. So, as I mentioned, they are up at the whiteboards working through a problem together to try and figure out the answer to it. And then we will also go through that together as a class so that any confusion can be cleared up, students can ask questions, and all of that. They are expected to be active participants at this time. That doesn't mean that they have to share out in front of the whole class, but I am expecting that every student is working within their small group, whether that mean leading the way and writing on the board or asking questions of their peers or just contributing to the problem that they're working on. That said, students are rarely going to have homework. They will have a check for understanding at the end of every lesson. That is to be completed in class. The only time that they will have homework is if they don't finish that check for understanding and have to take it home to finish it. Grading policies. So all grades are broken down into two categories. They are summative, which are all the tests that your students take, and formatives, which are those check for understandings that I just mentioned. 85% of your students' grade is based on those tests, and only 15% is the checks for understanding. So it is very important that your student prepare very well for the tests so that they can do well on those tests and keep their grade at the level that they're aiming for. That said, I know that there are going to be times where students will struggle with a topic or maybe not prepare as well as they could. So there is a retake option. The new learning that they learn is going to replace the old, so every single test that your students take is able to be retaken if they struggle or if they did not get the score that they wished that they could get. There's no cap on this score, meaning that if a student gets everything right on the retake, they get the 100% in the gradebook. It's not going to be capped at 80% or anything like that. There are a few things that your student does need to do in order to be eligible to retake, though. First, they need to be an active participant during the group work time, like I mentioned before. Just make sure that they are participating within their group. They don't have to share out in front of everybody, but they do need to participate. They also need to complete every check for understanding. It doesn't have to be 100% correct or anything like that, but it does need to be fully completed. And lastly, there is a relearning assignment that your student will have to complete, and that relearning assignment will be based on the questions that they missed on the test so that they get an opportunity to relearn that material and hopefully get a better grasp on it and therefore do better on the retake. The retake itself, your students will only have to take the questions that are similar to the ones that they missed on the original test. So there is no way for them to do worse on the retake than they did on the original test. Lastly, PowerSchool is the best place to go if you are curious about how your student is doing in the classroom. I update this almost daily, so just make sure that if you want to see your student's grade, you're going to PowerSchool. Nothing is on Canvas when it comes to grades, so straight to PowerSchool if you want to know how your kids are doing. All right, cell phone and technology policy. There's an Indiana law that states students are not allowed to use their cell phones and other electronic devices in the classroom. So for that reason, at the beginning of every class, each student is assigned a slot in a caddy that I have up here near my desk. And the students are to put their cell phones into that slot, and it stays there for the duration of the class period. They will get it back with about 5 minutes remaining towards the end of the class period. When it comes to headphones, smartwatches, those types of things, the expectation is that students have them put away in their bags, or in the case of the smartwatches, they can wear them. However, if they are continuously using it to text or do anything else other than check what time it is, that becomes a problem, and we will have to start putting that up with their phones as well. So as long as the smartwatches are not being used and all headphones are put away and not being used, we're in good shape. But cell phones do go up in a caddy at the front of the room. Okay, let's talk about Canvas. I mentioned before that all the grades are located in PowerSchool, but if you're looking for any content-related things, Canvas is your friend. All right, all of the materials that we use throughout the course every single day can be found in the modules on Canvas. So on the left side of the screen, you just click modules and you will go straight to all of the material that we're going to be covering. It is broken up by unit. So right now, Unit 1 is the only unit that is in there. And then I broke that module up by the number of lessons that there are, and I try to keep the dates as updated as possible right next to the lesson, so if your student is ever absent, they know which lesson that they missed. Sometimes they can be a little bit off because we don't quite finish a lesson on the date that we started it, and then that backs things up a bit, but for the most part, the dates will be accurate. Inside each of those lessons, you will find video notes of me doing all of the problems that we covered in class, a copy of the notes, so a worked out problem for each of the problems that we do in class, as well as review materials. So the checks for understandings that we do are on there. There's an extra practice on there and a key for the extra practice as well, should your student need extra practice for whatever that lesson might be. There are also test review materials on there, so a copy of the cheat sheet that I allow students to use, or a key ideas sheet, a sample of that sheet, the study guide, and the key to the study guide as well. So all the materials that your student could ever need can be found in the modules on Canvas. Any special information that I need to push out to kids or to parents will be on the announcements tab on Canvas. That would be for any sort of e-learning day that we have, or if there's a special change to the schedule, that will be pushed out via Canvas announcements. And finally, all the test dates that I have planned are found on the Canvas calendar, so students can look ahead or parents can look ahead and find when tests are coming up. If that test date needs to get pushed back, I move it right away so that it is updated and you always know when the tests are. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out, preferably via email, just because it's easier, but if you need to call, go right ahead as well. Thank you.